Hey, I'm Charissa, and let me take you along memory road around Europe. In the beginning, I was driving home to Germany from the UK. I packed the van for the 3 months, and with a farewell cheer from my mum, I was off on the road. I crossed into Austria and drove through the mountainous landscape towards Slovenia. I entered Slovenia via a steep mountain pass and drove towards Ljubljana, which I thought was super pretty. I found a scenic spot for the night, and the next morning I made my way to the Postojna caves, which were absolutely impressive, even though it was a very touristic activity. I continued the drive, and thanks to Google Maps, I accidentally went to a closed border crossing, but I made it to Croatia in the end and finally saw the Mediterranean. Over the next 10 days, I drove along the scenic coast until Albania. While this town looks super peaceful, during the night there was an animal jumping up and down the van, but I survived and continued to Zadar. Zadar is known for its sea organ, which creates these interesting sounds when the waves hit the shore. This bridge was for sure the narrowest of the journey, with only 2 meters 10 wide. It led into the Krka National Park, which is known for its lakes and waterfalls. On my drive, I saw the shocking event of a burning car, reminding me of how quickly this journey could be over, but I safely made it to Split and met up with a friend to explore the nearby island of Hvar. Back with the van, I picked up my first guest from the airport and we found a lucky spot by the water. We even went for a night swim and saw bioluminescent plankton. The next day, we explored the nearby town of Trogir before continuing the drive. The next highlight were these super blue lakes. We hiked down and had a cool plunge, but then had to hike back up in 36 degrees heat. We drove through Bosnia and Herzegovina for a day, and as we were walking down to a beach, we had a pretty scary encounter with a dog that was chasing us. It ended up being a very nice evening though. We found a nice spot, and the next day we continued the drive to Dubrovnik. entered Montenegro and got into some pretty heavy traffic, but luckily dinner was already being prepared. The next day was very special because it was my first time going scuba diving. After this adventure, we made a little detour away from the coast to see the Montenegrin mountains. We arrived in Albania and I instantly felt like the houses and the landscapes looked quite different to the previous Balkan countries. We spent the night at this beach, and the next morning we accidentally had breakfast in someone's driveway, and instead of being angry at us, the owner gave us 2 beers and a raki. Absolute peak hospitality in Albania. We then drove into Tirana, where the traffic was completely crazy. I dropped off my guests at the airport and spent a few days relaxing at this campground. In case you were wondering, this is what my little camper van Clifford looks from the inside. The table comes down for a second bed. I picked up my next friend in Tirana and we did a round trip through southern Albania. The first stop was the picturesque town of Berat. Next we drove to the awesome canyon, which was truly awesome. The next day had a theme of scary bridges, but the scariest for sure was this car bridge, which went straight across the canyon. After an hour on this dirt road, we got to a hill that the van just wouldn't make. But luckily a friendly local came by and told us that instead of going the direct road that Google Maps suggests, we have to drive all the way back up north and then go south. What a bummer. After another dirt road and driving past a bushfire, which we later saw being extinguished by a helicopter, we made it to our destination of the Blue Eye, which is a spring that is more than 50 meters deep. We then drove back north along the coast and made a stop at this beautiful beach. I liked it so much that I returned after picking up my next friend in Tirana. Near the beach, we found one of the many Albanian bunkers. As we continued our drive south, we picked up 2 lovely hitchhikers from Denmark, quickly became friends, and then decided to spend the evening and the night together at these beautiful hot springs. The next day, we drove to the historic town of Gjirokastra, which was pretty but also kind of empty in some places. After this, we continued to the Greek border. Over the following 2 weeks, we drove across northern Greece, with the first stop being the Vikos Gorge, which had a surprisingly similar bridge to the one in Albania. From this natural wonder we headed to the next, Meteora, an absolutely surreal place. These rock formations just pop out of nowhere, and in addition there are monasteries built on top of them. We were not quite the only ones enjoying the sunset there, but it was a magical place to be. The next highlight was easily one of my favorites of the entire trip. We hiked up Mount Olympus. With more than 2,900 meters, it's the tallest mountain in Greece, and most importantly, it's the home of the Greek gods. The landscape changed quickly as we ascended to our camp spot for the night. The next day we made the final push towards the peak. And we made it, and the weather gods gave us the most amazing view of the sea and the surrounding mountains. We were super lucky with our camp spot for the second night, and the next morning we had to hike all the way back down. We tried taking some post-hike exhausted pictures, but you see how well it worked. After saying goodbye to my friend at the airport in Thessaloniki, I relaxed for a few days at the nearby Kakidiki Peninsula. The approach to my second camp spot there was also quite adventurous as it led through a riverbed, but the van mastered it easily. As I reached the spot, I wasn't only spoiled by amazing views, but the olive yard owner next to the spot insisted on giving me the most delicious food. I then visited my Greek relatives before picking up my next guest at the airport in Thessaloniki and continuing the drive east. We stopped at the Nestos National Park, and if we had known it would be this beautiful, we would have for sure planned to stay for longer. After another beach park up for the night, which was luckily more peaceful than the previous one, where a barking dog was running around the van, we finally crossed into Turkey the next morning. Our route led through the northwest of the country, with the first stop, Istanbul. Reaching this city felt like a huge milestone as it was the most eastern point of the journey. Immersing ourselves in the hustle and bustle of this colorful city and seeing the impressive mosques was truly an experience. We made the smart decision not to drive into the city with the van, but when we returned, we found that the air pressure of one of the tires was critically low. We rushed to a garage and found out that there was a screw stuck in the tire, but it could be quickly fixed for an equivalent of just €6. Our first stop of a series of archaeological sites was the ancient Greek city of Pergamon. It was absolutely impressive, but it still puzzles me that large parts of the Pergamon altar can only be found in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. We stayed the night next to a remote restaurant. The owner didn't speak any English, but he showed us how to herd the cows and the sheep with him, and also gave us food. I don't want to glamorize this experience though, because he later became a bit creepy and walked around the van at night, trying to shine inside with his flashlight. But all was good when we left in the morning. We enjoyed the calm before the storm on Tunda Island, because heavy rain was forecasted and turned many roads into lakes. Luckily the rain paused when we arrived in the Temple of Athena at Assos, where once Aristotle had his academy. Next up, Troy. Indeed the Troy with the Trojan War in Greek mythology. It was very impressive to walk around there, as 4,000 years of rebuilding have left 9 archaeological layers of the city. We stayed at a small campground in Troy and had a lovely evening chatting with the owner. And this is what laundry day looks like when it's raining outside. We crossed into Bulgaria, and at the border we had to drive through a mandatory paid car disinfection station. We later researched that this disinfection is simply the result of a corrupt politician. We stopped at the second largest city in Bulgaria, Plovdiv, which has an impressive Roman amphitheater. Back in the van, my poor friend had to cool her many mosquito bites on her legs with cucumbers. Next, we took a chairlift to the start of the picturesque 7-Rita Lakes hike. It felt like walking through a fairy tale landscape. Not even an incoming thunderstorm and the thought of missing the last chairlift down could spoil this beautiful hike. We next stopped at the impressive Rila Monastery. From there we drove to the capital, Sofia. I was surprised to see Roman ruins blending in with modern buildings. We also happened to see a wedding dance on the streets. After picking up my mom from the airport, we continued to drive to Serbia. From there, the plan was to drive through Serbia, Hungary and Slovenia to Austria. We drove to the Dirty Blato Sands, also referred to as the European Sahara. That was indeed sand, but not quite Sahara-like sand dunes. It was still very pretty though. We next visited the city of Novi Sad further north. From there we crossed into Hungary and drove straight to Budapest, which was absolutely majestic. We then found a relaxing spot at the Balaton Lake, which was pleasantly empty in mid-September. As we continued the drive, we had a bit of a situation as our windscreen wiper fell off on the highway, but luckily we could get a replacement in the next town. With the new windscreen wiper, we safely made it to Slovenia, and after a quick stop in Ljubljana to show my mum this beautiful city, we continued to Lake Bled, which is just scenic from every angle. After driving across a mountain pass to Austria, I said goodbye to my mum and was surprised by a pretty heavy thunderstorm. I met up with the next friend who was also on a tour in his car, and so we continued in a convoy. We drove along the edge of the Triglav National Park towards Venice, crossing the border of Slovenia and Italy 4 times in the process. Thanks EU for making that so easy. I could watch a colorful welcome fireworks display right from my bed at our campsite near Venice. In the morning, I picked up my next friend from the train station and we strolled through the many narrow alleys and bridges of Venice. We then explored Padua, which has the oldest botanic garden in the world and the second oldest university in Italy. After all these cities, we had a relaxing picnic at Lake Garda. We then woke up near Cinque Terre, which are 5 of the cutest Italian towns. We continued along the coast, and this tunnel felt super sketchy to drive through. We enjoyed the last day on the coast before driving to the mountainous north. We did a beautiful hike there, and with the sunny weather we had a clear view of Mont Blanc in the distance. We drove to an elevation of 2,500 meters on a mountain pass to cross into Switzerland. Driving through the lush green landscape felt like driving through a postcard. we made it to the last stop of the journey, Zurich. And with that, after 3 months on the road, I crossed back into Germany and drove home. The rainy weather definitely reflected my feelings of this trip being over. But I feel immensely grateful to have been able to do this. It was truly an adventure that wouldn't have been possible without the support from my parents, friends, and friendly strangers along the way. Thank you so much.